You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Okay, this emailer wants to be named Tommy. That's not his real name. That's okay, right? That's good. So life advice rr@gmail.com. Okay, call me Tom. Big fan of the show. For some reason, your podcast is the only sports show my wife can stand listening to with me. Okay, shout out to your wife. Might have something to do with the Cape and Island references, since Martha's Vineyard has quickly become our favorite place to live, even in late fall, not just summertime. I'm a law student looking to get into corporate law in Boston, but every now and then I seriously consider the idea of just joining a tiny law firm in Eggertown that will pay far less. Eggertown is one of the towns there, just for those that don't know. Pay us less, but just living there year round. Ooh, so you're thinking about doing this. Okay, this is a good one. 27, just became a dad a month ago, easily the first of my friends to have a child. Most aren't in serious relationships yet, and yet my friends have at least seemed interested, as many ask for pictures each day. Oh, okay. I also know that this will likely get old, and nobody likes the guy who makes every conversation about their kid. Also realizing it'll be harder said than done to not do so, because suffice to say, he consumes most of my daytime and energy. My wife and I at least intend to maintain our own lives, not let our passions, hobbies fall by the wayside due to parenthood. I also freaking love the little guy, and I understand where those dads are coming from when they bring up their kids all the time. Yeah, no, this is I think this is all really good self-awareness and all that stuff. I think parents, I have, different groups of parent friends, and I'll notice that some have just decided, yeah, I'm going to have kids and I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to be a loving parent, but I'm also not going to just stop doing what I want to do in my life. I'm going to go on trips. I'm going to leave my kids with parents. That's why, some people love living near their family, because you have that option. It's actually an incredible thing to have if you think about it. The option to drop your kids off at your parents and go on long trips. I have another buddy who has a ton of cash, and I think he owns part of a nightclub. Well, I don't say what I know he does. And he and his wife get after it still. And they, once every few months when they're going to have a big night out, they'll make sure a nanny is there to sleep overnight the night before, so they can come in late and, whatever. And then in the morning, Blues Clues and juice boxes, and they can wake up when they need to wake up. That may sound terrible to some of you. And honestly, to stay out that late and have kids kind of sounds terrible to me in general. But I think that part of it, we're like, look, let's not, because there are parents too that I felt like you just want to be a parent. Like there's friends of yours that just want to have a ton of burden. It's almost like they root for it. That's something that's just happening more and more in society, by the way. Like people rooting for things to be way worse than they are. Like, oh, geez, Like, what do you mean? Like, you want to go to a movie? Oh, my God, this kid. Okay, so you're never going to do anything the rest of your life because you had a kid? Other people have had kids, and they still will do some things. So I like that you are pointing this out. And yeah, like it's different, right? Because it's your kid and you're incredibly proud. But if you're saying you don't want to be that dad, I always try to ask about my friends' kids because I am interested. I like hearing about what's going on. But yeah, there's also a line too when it's somebody telling you like how. I think that the key here is, and this is all the same thing, is that if you're going to be proud mom, proud dad, and talk about your kid, I think when it starts to stretch into the weird category is when you start pretending like your kid's Captain America and he's like the only one doing anything cool. And that's where it can become annoying. Be like, oh my God, he's killing it in math. Like he's 6.
Level.
Yes.
So good.
He's 6. Be like, oh, his T-ball games, he stole 100 bases. Doesn't everybody just whip the ball into the outfield because no one can catch? Yeah, but I mean, he had like 7. He had like 7 inside the park home runs the other day. Like, don't they not keep score and it's like 3 innings long? Yeah, but you can tell his hand-eye is insane. It's on a tee though, right? Just double checking. Like he's still eating his boogers. Yeah, but his hand-eye is nuts. All right, so you know what I'm saying? Like it's just there. And sometimes you can't help it as a parent. As some of you as parents, you just won't be able to help it. And you know what? It's all coming from a good place. It's all coming from a place of love. So if you love your kids that much and you're so enamored with them and you're a little annoying about it, there's far worse personality traits that you could have. And as I get older, even without kids, I don't worry about it as much. And I always try to ask about my friends' kids, not because I'm a phony, but because I wanted to know how they're doing, because I know how hard it is for a lot of people out there too that try forever, and that is something where when your friends finally have the kids after years of it gets really weird. It sucks when your friends want to have a family and it takes forever. All right, so this is not the part of the email, despite as much time as I took on that. The second part is, if you were starting a family and had a job career that allowed it, would you consider moving back to the Vineyard year round? The answer is an emphatic no from me. A couple things. Because I'm not like a native, and people say that because I moved around a lot when I was a little kid. And then I even moved there when I was a month into my sophomore year. So I moved there when I was 15, and I brought it up before, but it wasn't the easiest place to move to at all. Like, I'd always been popular. Everything had worked out. People liked me. And then for whatever reason, and I kind of like had a little bit of an attitude myself. So I just was different. And it was a very laid back, people weren't moving there back then. It was in a massive recession time too, the early 90s. So I think it was 1990. Yeah, it would have been 1990. And so I'm not a native. I'm the oldest of 5, and I am very different as far as the Vineyard connection thing to the rest of my siblings. Because here's something you have to understand. Now, you're going to be thinking you're living some sort of dream moving to these places, and moving to these resort areas. It is great in theory, but you have no idea how you're going to feel about it until you actually do it. So it becomes a very people fall for this all the time. And it would happen because I remember one year I took a semester off because I had this bartending gig lined up, and my father was doing a house. And so I was going to be able to work construction during the day, bartend at night. I was sick of being broke all the time. So I was like, I'm going to go back up to school with some money. But the funny thing is too, because I was from the Vineyard, everybody thought I was like loaded. And I wasn't. I just wasn't. I mean, my father did all right by the time we lived out there to have a living. And none of us certainly were going to bed hungry or anything like that. But the Vineyard is a self-sustaining community. I pointed this out before. Like there's all level, like somebody works at the checkout counter, right? Somebody is in the service industry, sheetrockers, the whole thing. And it becomes a kind of a weird place to be year round, unless you love the isolation, because there is a romanticizing of living in any of these resort areas where you go, man, wouldn't it just be great to just kind of live here? And maybe you're wired for it. Maybe it's great. Like my father was wired for it. He liked it. I think it was kind of like this lifelong dream to go live in some really cool place, but it's not, I just don't think it's safe for the kids. So that part's great. But the concern you could have for your kids is that if you become kind of like a native kid, like if you were a kid like 2 or 3 and you move there, it's basically like you're native, even though you're not allowed to say it. There's this odd attachment that places like Martha's Vineyard have, Nantucket has it, certain points in the Cape. I think ski resort towns that are kind of like fun year-round towns, but it's still a seasonal thing, have this draw to it. Some maybe like bigger cities like a New Orleans that has a real different vibe to it, where you grow up in it and you're always like this magnetic pull is always pulling you back. Now, look, if you can make a living and you love living there, who's anyone to say that you shouldn't do it? But there's a real gut check moment when it's November, the wind is whipping because you're on an island and the boats are canceled for the day, and you want to just go to a high-end restaurant. If you work in Boston, like you can't just go to the North End and pop in for like a great spot on Hanover. All right. You can't just last minute say, hey, you know what? I feel like going to a Celtics game. If you want to go clothes shopping, yes, you could order everything online, but like if you may not be in a normal clothing store for months at a time until you take the boat and go over. So if you like the isolation part of it, that's fine. But there's 2 things. Like, don't do it just for you. Think about your kid. And I would say, if you're really, really thinking, anybody that ever wants to do this, just go ahead and do it. And I would argue like less than 25% of you will actually stick it out. I'll never forget that semester taking time off. And then 2 guys were like, all right, well, I'm going to take time off too. And we're all get a house together. And I was like, all right, but what are you doing? They're like, we're going to live here year round. I go, okay, but it's great in the summer. And then September is an awesome month. And then it starts getting real quiet. And if you like quiet, fine. And it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. And if you can have a living, that's great. most people can't sustain a living, and it can get a little like, I think a lot of us will have this moment where I want to live in Montana sometimes, and I'll go, it'd be great just to be in this little mountain town, little community, morning paper, go get breakfast, say hi to everybody, wave, and that's how I'm going to be when I get older. And it's like, no, you're not. You're still going to want to go to SEC games, and you like being on the beach, and you like being in the mix every now and then when you have to be in the mix. So you're making up this version of a life that you'd be bored of in a few months. But I think we always kind of do this. I think men do this more than women sometimes, and I don't know what that is about escaping or something. But I think that's what's great about women is a lot of time you'll be like, what are you talking about? That's the dumbest idea ever. And you'll be like, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe this is stupid. So there you go. That was a long advice, but I just would hate to have anybody move to the Vineyard. And I'm not even like dumping on the Vineyard. I'm just telling you got to be wired very different. And I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. All right. I think we'll end it on that. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the Ryen Russillo podcast. We're going to Booger McFarland on next week as the SEC gets started. We'll talk with him, probably a little college, a little NFL. Mike Vick is coming back again soon. And we get a lot of really cool stuff planned for next, stuff we're doing for the rest of the football season. All right, so we'll keep that going. And again, please subscribe and spread the word. And we'll talk to you on Wednesday.